Welcome to Drinks in the Library, the only library where drinks aren't just allowed, they are required. I'm your librarian host, Gigi Howard, and each episode I'll be interviewing a guest about a much-loved book that we will be pairing with a drink for you to enjoy along with us or consider for your next book club meetup. As always, stay curious and support your local library. Hello, Libration Nation. This week's book is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl, which is, of course, a whimsical children's novel about Charlie Bucket, a kind, poor boy who wins a once-in-a-lifetime tour of the mysterious Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Since so many of us know this story from the book and, of course, the movies, my guest and I, Matthew, were able to have a conversation about the history of the book and Dahl's legacy and about how art and our views of it change over time. All right, Matthew Stern is my guest this week. He is an award-winning public speaker and writer with over 40 years of professional experience. His works include the novels Amiga and the Remainders, as well as the best-selling public speaking book Mastering Table Topics. A lifelong resident of Southern California, he grew up in Reseda and graduated from California State University. He now lives in Lake Forest. When he's not rooting for the Dodgers and Rams, he enjoys exercising and spending time with his family, including his granddaughter. You can find him on social media platforms at MAS Writer and on his website, MatthewArnoldStern.com. Our drink this week is a favorite local brewery of Matthew's. That is the Green Cheek Beer Brewery. If you are in California, go on and head on over to Green Cheek to grab a beer and listen to this episode. For those of us outside of the Golden State, I think a good pairing is the Sam Adams Chocolate Bock, of course, reference to the chocolate factory. A little note about the audio. Matthew did record his side in the Green Cheek Brewery, which is cool, but you will hear some background noise as well. All right, before we get started, if you're liking the show, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast, rate and review, and tell a friend about it this week. Also, don't forget to head over to my merch shop, grab something, help support the show that way. I really appreciate it. All right, let's get start recording because I need the listeners or viewers whoever's listening to this, I need you to know Matthew is at the Green Cheek and tell us about it.
Well, my daughter's boyfriend's been working here for a while. He's a brewer here. That's a correct term, right? Okay. Yeah, he's here, so and my daughter's here, so they can correct me if I misstate anything. So it's a local brewery here, and they have stores throughout Orange County and in San Diego County. We're at the one in Costa Mesa in California, where we're not too far from South Coast Plaza and John Wayne Airport.
Okay.
And it's a really lovely brewery. We're sitting in the outdoor patio, and I know it's going to make people in other parts of the country really jealous because while everybody's freezing, it's overcast, but still a very comfortable day. And here in the outdoor patio, a lot of people bring their pets.
Okay, and you suggested it's their IPA, right? The Green Cheek IPA.
Yes. Well, the one that I'm drinking is a non-alcoholic IPA.
Okay.
Because first of all, I'm driving today, so definitely want to go with the non-alcoholic choice. But usually when you get commercial non-alcoholic beers but this is an IPA. They actually go through the process of brewing an IPA. But him, who's my daughter's boyfriend, I think he mentioned it's a process of dry hopping. Yeah, I'm being told that's correct. And so they actually get it down to zero point 0.4 APV, and it still has that wonderful IPA flavor and clarity. I've been drinking this with my lunch, and it's a nice, clear IPA with lots of, carbonation. It's delicious.
Oh, good. I love that non-alcoholic beers are so good, and you don't even notice that they don't need alcohol. It tastes the same. So that's so good. And yeah, I did. So I'm looking at you. You have like beautiful clouds. I am looking outside my window where we are three degrees in the wind chill
Yeah.
right now, and we're about to have an insane storm. So I'm happy for everyone in California.
I know a lot of people ask, why do you put up with all the high prices and everything in California? And it's days like this when you can still go outside and enjoy the sunshine and everybody else is, yeah, not. So,
We're about to freeze to death. So yeah.
yeah,
Anyhow, so you're in California. I looked up like you're close to like Laguna Beach and that
yeah,
area. Yes.
yeah,
As like a classic millennial, I was like, "Oh, Laguna Beach. I wonder if you've met
yeah,
LC. I'm sure you haven't.
yeah, VOC and all that stuff. Yeah.
Huh, that was giving me life 20 years ago for sure.
Yeah, OC was, was very, very, I mean, it still is, isn't it? I think there's still a real Housewives of Orange County show that's still out here.
Oh, oh yes, Matthew,
Yeah,
yes. And I am like their number one fan.
yeah,
Awesome. Okay, so I think we can go ahead and like dive into the book. It's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
yeah.
Classic. And you and I talked about this a little bit before. So I know I can just jump into the first question of who were you when you first read this book? And you've got a great answer.
Well, this was sixth grade. I was 12 years old, and we read the book aloud in class. And I think that's one thing about the reading experience we don't often get is the idea of community reading, where you're all sitting around and you're reading a book out loud and people are reacting to it in real time. So it was just a wonderful story. And it's about, you see these kids going off on this adventure. And certainly with Charlie, you're following along and how he was in such a terrible, desperate situation. And then to be able to go on this wonderful opportunity where everything works out well for him. Yeah.
Yeah, well, okay, so what was it like doing that reading aloud in class and like looking around and seeing everybody react? Kind of reminds me like they talk about in movie theaters that it's so much
Yeah.
more interesting to watch a movie with other people, right? Because you're all
Yeah.
reacting together. I imagine it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, it is. In fact, there was one line where the U.S. were saying, I think it was the one about Violet Beauregard, and they were talking about how bad it is that she's chewing gum, and it's just as bad as those who pick their nose. And the kids were looking around to say, okay, who's been picking their nose a lot?
Yeah, yeah, I know. And I have to say, like, I am one of those people, I hate gum so much. It's like, so
Yeah,
like that's always part of the story that I'm like, they're right. These,
yeah.
you got it. Yeah.
I've been rereading it again. And what's interesting looking at the book today versus the way we read it back in, this was 72. So this shows you how old I am. But, certainly when you look at what happens with these kids, what they go through are basically character tests. And then they meet their fate as a result of the consequence of their actions.
Right.
And I think that's a very important, that's something that quite often we don't see in the real world. We see people acting terribly and not getting any repercussions, and then seeing people get the experience the consequence of their actions
Hmm.
is very satisfying when you see it in a story.
Yeah, for sure. I guess that's an interesting thing, like reading it as a child, because I read it as an adult. And then
Yeah.
you're seeing, like, basically, I think you find out at the end that all the kids are okay. But in the story, it kind of is like they're getting murdered.
Yeah, and actually, when you look at it, I'm not going to spoil a over 50-year-old book, but they're not exactly okay. They come out worse for the wear for their experience. They're alive, and they get the chocolate that there's a price that they pay that they have to live with.
Yeah.
And again, that's another thing about when you see people face the consequence of their actions
Hmm.
and that they have to live with those consequences. I think that's another really powerful thing about the story. And the thing about Roald Dahl as an author is he wasn't afraid to tackle tough subjects with children. I think the best children's authors are afraid to be real with their audience. They don't patronize them. They don't talk down to them because they're children. These are terrible things that can happen in the world. And I think Dahl does a wonderful job, and certainly in this story, about touching on those things.
Yeah, I guess Dahl is a character in and of himself. Like you said,
Yeah,
I think a lot of people, we don't have to go too much into explaining the story. If I think
yeah,
has everybody seen the movie at least by
yeah.
this point? So yeah, let's talk about Dahl a little bit as an author and some of the interesting facets of this book.
I mean, definitely is, he's problematic. And I think what's interesting is how his estate, since his death, has been trying to apologize. And even in some of the more recent editions, have tried to soften some of the things in his books, which has been a matter of debate about whether that was appropriate or not. But one thing in particular, as an example, is the depiction of or the backstory about the Oompa Loompa. It was really hard to read that in 2026 because definitely his British colonialist attitudes came through in that part of the story. And I understand that they even cleaned up some of the more negative aspects of it in recent editions, but still, it's a very hard backstory to read. And of course, when you look at the movies, they try to push that all out of the way completely.
Right. And so the story, I guess if you haven't read it, he has the factory.
Yeah,
People try, and it's sort of based, I guess, on a rivalry between Cadbury and another chocolate, a
right,
real chocolate factory in England. And so, but yeah, Willy Wonka has the factory. He has to close it down because people are stealing his secrets. But then he reopens it, but no one goes in and no one comes out.
right.
He's basically, like you said, colonized. I don't know, forced the Oompa Loompas are now his exclusive workers and they all live and work
Yeah,
in the factory.
right. Which is, again, in 2026. But even back then, that's a really uncomfortable. It's slavery in essence. And it's, again, you could, if you analyze it too much about what it says about the Oompa Loompas and who they're comparing them to, and that they're slated to certain types of work. Again, it's one of those uncomfortable things. It's the same thing that I know a lot of people who are looking at Harry Potter today. Again, the same idea. There's a beloved or once beloved English author who wrote a beloved children's book series. I mean, and again, as she reveals herself of who she is, you look back at her books and you see, oh, there are things here that are really problematic.
Yeah.
Like the first time you saw, well, when they showed the goblins in the movie were running Gringotts and the very, very obvious stereotypes that you can't avoid. That's what you get that. And I know there's always a debate whether we're talking about Dahl or whether we're talking about Rowling or any other artist. Can you separate the art from the artist? It's sometimes you can and sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
And especially even when authors let their views at least subconsciously seep into their stories.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for sure. And I think Roald Dahl is one of those obvious ones because so Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was written in 1964. He, I think, was openly racist, openly anti-Semitic,
Yeah,
and it's so and openly like fat phobic too, which is like a really interesting
yeah,
part in the story. So like when I was growing up, I said already I'm a millennial in the 90s, like fat phobia was still rampant everywhere. And now we're much more conscious about body positivity and all these things. But in, I guess, 2023, they decided to rewrite Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and take out
right.
any reference of people being fat. And that's
Yeah.
very interesting to me. What do you think?
And an ongoing problem because do you focus on preserving the story as it was written or do you change it to meet our modern understandings about things. And it applies to so much in literature. Like you look at Shakespeare and The Merchant of Venice, for example, and even going back to Chaucer and some of the things that he wrote. I know that there's a debate about whether these are products of their times or whether, there are certain things that people have always known are wrong. So it's one of those struggles and that we have to face.
Yeah, and deal with. I'm gonna like I fortunately am not someone that has to make the call of do we fix these books or do we leave it in? I like you were saying earlier about how Roald Dahl like really trusted children and wrote for children, understood that
Yeah,
children deal with difficult things. And I think that it's important for people to understand that things have changed, that things are different, that like something that written in 1964 is going to have words in it. And I think he did change, Roald Dahl did change Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when he was alive. Do you want to speak to that?
yeah. That I mean, certainly the Jungs were one of those things that it was really bad in the original, and they've softened it up. And I looked at a more recent edition, and they tried to make things a little better, but sometimes you can't see what you've seen before. It's sort of like we've taken our granddaughter to Chuck E. Cheese. And
Uh-huh.
they play Kids Bop, and they do like kids friendly versions of popular hits. And a lot of them include profanity, like please, 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 has one particular line that we you can think of, and they will clean it up, but you know what the word actually is.
Yeah. I guess the kids don't know yet, but they will find out soon.
Yeah. Quite often they find out a lot sooner than we would like. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that analogy too, that, you can clean it up some. I think that is probably like one of the most interesting things. I do want to say, I brought this up before. I equate it to recently, not recently, now it's been a few years, but I grew up with Judy Blume, right? Read all the
Yeah.
books, loved all the books. So I
Mhm.
wanted to read them with my daughter and picked up my first favorite book ever, which is starring Sally J. Friedman as herself, is one of Judy's earliest novels. And it is like very, I wouldn't say harsh, but it's not filtered down of how they talk about things.
Uh,
The words they use talk about death, and it's just kind of it's very eye-opening to read that and then have read the things that have come out recently. And yeah, it's kind of reminds me of that. And Judy Blume herself has gone back and like modernized like Are You There, God?
um,
It's Me, Margaret, for girls that are now going through puberty, so that the words are something that they can understand. So but
yeah.
I think that's, like I said, I'm not the person that has to make these calls, but Judy is still alive, so she can
Yeah.
choose what she wants to change. There's that other aspect of like going back and changing an author's work. That's not what he wrote. Yeah, he wrote, what is his name? What is Augustus Gloop? He said that he was
Yeah.
enormously fat,
Yeah.
and now they took it out and just made it so he's enormous. So I guess he's just supposed to be very tall.
But then again, it's the same issue because the whole thing about that particular scene, he gets into his predicament because he is gluttonous.
Yes.
And it's sort of like, yeah, you could take out the offending words, but still the basic plot point is the same, that he is gluttonous and he gets into trouble for his gluttony. And he goes up his tube and they worry about him getting stuck about it. And the thing is, you can edit that and clean up that scene as much as you want, but it's still never going to be it's still there. You can't, the plot point doesn't work if he isn't the character that he is.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest problems in stories is that it's not just a matter of tweaking a few things here and there to be acceptable if the whole underlying plot is, very troubling. This is why Disney shelved Song of the South. It wasn't just merely just a thing here and there. It's the whole underlying concept that is claiming that Black people were better off under slavery, or they still wanted to be in that environment, which we know was absolutely false. And you can't, the story does not function without that prejudiced attitude. And
Right.
that's why the whole thing had to be locked in the vault too. And they had to redo the ride at Disneyland and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's a great point. Yeah, it's when the concept of the story lies on a very prejudiced belief system, then it's totally maybe makes the
Yeah.
story not worth hearing.
Now, one way that people have been able to sort of modernize stories without touching the original text is when you see the adaptations or you see the fan fictions or inspired by works that sort of take those characters and build upon them. It's like you talked about the Willy Wonka film, the original one with Gene Wilder. And our understanding of Willy Wonka as a character comes from that story. You know, we're used to Wild or Willy Wonka looking a certain way and acting a certain way based on Gene Wilder's performance. But Willy Wonka in the original book is different. He's more of a friendly, nice guy, sort of old, very energetic. He isn't the trickster that Gene Wilder portrayed him to be, with a bit of a malevolent edge. In fact, Roald Dahl did not like Gene Wilder's performance of that character.
Oh, he didn't?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay, tell me about it.
Well, again, it's because the way that Gene Wilder portrayed him is different from the vision that Dahl had for him in the book. It's a different character in many ways, even if the plot points are the same. I mean, again, there's the bit of malevolence that was into that character, and also Gene Wilder's Wonka was manipulative.
Okay.
But Gene Wilder's performance is the Willy Wonka that everybody now pictures in their mind. And that became the inspiration of all the depictions of him later on, like Johnny Depp and what Timothy Chalamet did a few years ago.
Yeah.
Which I really didn't like the Timothy Chalamet version that much, because there was a problem with that particular character, and that they made him too good.
Hmm.
And yeah, I wrote about this in one of my blog posts. And the
Yeah.
problem with his Wonka is that when you have a character who starts off 100% good, there's nowhere for him to grow as a character. And
Right.
maybe he'll pick up a little bit of skills here and there, but he's sort of like universally nice to everybody he meets. And if you're used to the Gene Wilder character, that's not the type of person that Wonka is or became again, or became later on. So I think that's one of those things to be like, sort of the way that when people start adapting, characters from other stories, they go in different directions, and that's sort of a way that you could refine and change original characters. Wicked is another great example. Our understanding of the characters of the Oz has now changed from what we've read in the first Wicked, the books, but the Wicked, the musical, and music, and now the movies completely changed that character in other ways. So it's interesting how we should add something different and transform a character in different ways.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so now I'm thinking now I'm thinking about
Yeah,
Elphaba
yeah,
and her character arc. I don't know, I'm gonna have to process that a little bit. But I like what you said. Like if a character in a story starts off perfect and good, then they have nowhere to grow. And I mean that is the meat of a story, right? That,
yeah,
that a character starts off, they have a problem, something is wrong, and then something goes worse, and then they have to climb the mountain. But if you are
yeah.
start off on the top of the mountain, you have nowhere to go.
You can it's possible to create that type of character,
Hmm.
but what you have to be able to do is to really test that character and whether that character upholds those values
Right.
as they go through. Like, I'm struggling with one character in the book I'm writing right now who is a good person, but the feedback that I got from my beta is you got to give him something to grow. You got to have something to challenge him.
Yeah.
and make him struggle, make him break down, or show why he doesn't break down in a certain situation where other characters do.
Yeah. Yeah. So to have that for Willy Wonka and Charlie a little bit, I want to go to the story. I want to go to the story
Yeah.
of Charlotte and the Chocolate Factory a bit of just, I guess, all right. So I'm going to read the characters first. The main ones, we've got Charlie Bucket, obviously our protagonist, Willy Wonka, Grandpa Joe, and then the four other children who are Augustus Gloop, Veruca Salt, Violet
Yeah.
Beauregard, and Mike TV, who also,
Right.
one of the funnier things to me is that these rewriting of the book is that they took out all of Mike TV's guns. And I just
Oh,
found him to be like, because I guess he's supposed to be like the stereotypical American, like just watches TV all the time and shoots guns,
yeah.
which as an American, I find hilarious.
Yeah. That's,
What do you think?
yeah. Well, I think certainly, yeah, guns are sort of a something that is unfortunately a part of our society,
Yeah.
certainly in a very negative way. And I know that there's always a sort of pressure to de-emphasize that part. It's same issues like smoking. They want to cut back on smoking because it had such a history of glamour, and now we're trying to discourage that type of, discourage it.
Hmm.
So it's interesting again that, yeah, I know what they were trying to do, but the problem is that guns are really too tightly wound in our image of of our country, and it's gotten worse over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't, I'm, to be clear, I am not promoting gun use.
No,
Believe it or not, I am not a gun owner. But I mean, I don't know if he had a cowboy hat, but they should have made sure he had a cowboy hat,
no.
guns, and TV. That's how the world views it.
Right. Yes. You mentioned an interesting story about editing guns. When Hamilton was nominated for a Tony, they had the Tony ceremony shortly after the mass shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando.
Mhm.
And so when they did performance, all the musicals do like a song or two from their musical. They did The World Turned Upside Down, where this was the Battle of Yorktown. So, of course, guns would be part of that scene. But they did not carry prop guns when they performed it in the Tonys because it was right after Orlando. So it was understandable in that case why they wouldn't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one thing that I often say is like things can get complicated and
Yeah.
but we have to be able to have these conversations where,
Yeah.
you can understand the nuance or you can understand what someone's intentions are versus putting like a blanket on anything like, okay, well, now we can't talk about anything ever. And I just think, like I said, having the conversation, understanding where people are coming from, making a choice in one scenario that you wouldn't make in another scenario. I mean, this is being,
Yeah.
I think.
A very difficult call because, and it's gotten worse in what, with social media and dealing with algorithms because there are certain words you can't say or you'll be suppressed on social media. So you get people saying things like I'm alive and deleted or essayed, and we get away from honest conversations about serious subjects.
Yeah.
George Carlin also had an interesting comic routine about that, about euphemisms and how, because we've gone for softer language, we've also made things more acceptable, or we become more afraid to talk about them, or we gloss over them. Whereas if we talk very plainly and honestly about things, then we can have more valuable conversations.
Yeah. And I think the having civil conversations with people maybe you don't agree with or you don't understand is what like keeps our society functioning and it's so
Yeah,
important and yeah, like you said, we're now social media, it's just we're all divided, like no one's talking to each other for real.
right.
Yeah, so maybe we can turn the page on that. I don't know. We're trying. We're trying.
I think one of the things that's going to help is person to person conversation
Hmm.
because people will say things hiding behind a screen that they will not say to somebody to their face.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I'm hoping for is greater in-person community and in-person conversation. That's certainly something that we have lost during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And certainly you're looking at kids today who missed out on not a couple of 2 or 3 years in their most formable years that they're not having personal conversations. It's all within a screen. They're not talking with each other. And they miss out on developing the social skills that people of our generation, your generations had when we played outside and we hung out in coffee shops and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or patios like the one we're on today.
Yes. Well, okay. We'll celebrate the positive. You're on a patio in California. I am now a little stressed because my daughter is running around with all the neighborhood kids. So there is a hope. So we have two examples of in-person stuff happening live right now. So that's a good thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we've had such an interesting conversation. I wanted to come back to this Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. What are your favorite aspects about this? Who would you recommend the story for?
Well, certainly I would love kids who are 12 years old, sixth graders, have the same experience that I had, being able to read that story aloud and to react in real time and then have discussions about it like we're having right now. Because, it ties into something else that we need to really develop is media literacy. How do you approach a piece of media, whether it's a book or a movie or a TV show or music? And how do you learn to talk about it in an intelligent way? And when you have a group that experiences a story read aloud and is able to react to it in real time and talk about their feelings about, okay, what did you think about this character? What do you think happened in this scene? It will encourage not just more intelligent and thoughtful discussions, but it will grow people's appreciation for writing and the written word.
Yeah.
So I would love children to have that experience again.
Yeah, I love it. So we're going to get this into all the sixth grade classes in the United States. Perfect.
Yeah. Yes. Good luck, because we got a lot of people who are very scrutinizing about what books go in.
As I'm sure you know, I agree with you very much. Yeah. So let's let children read again.
Yes.
I want to take some time to turn the spotlight on you and talk about I know you've written several books and let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, the book that I'm writing right now is inspired in a way by Charlie and the Chocolate Factory because it is about a group of, in this case, adult co-workers who are invited to participate in this contest. This video game contest, and the winners get a tour of their billionaire CEO's mansion. And what happens in that case is that they're trying to, when they get there, they find out that this is a recreation of a classic video game. And they face a series of challenges. They battle monsters the same way people do in video games. Each one of these battles are character tests. It reveals things about their characters with each one. And it's about a group of, as we typically happen in the workspace, people will, stay away from each other. They don't interact. And they're forced to reveal the truth about themselves as they go along in this.
Okay. Well, yeah, that does sound very inspired by Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, an adult version, I guess. Yeah.
Right, an adult version. Yeah. And then some of the other books that I write, like about a couple of them, one of them is Amiga, and it's based on the classic Commodore computer, and it's about a programmer who have to deal with something that happened to her in her past in order to solve present problems that happen in her present day with her family and her career.
Okay.
And then the other novel that I brought is The Remainders, and it's about a homeless son and his troubled father who have to reconnect throughout Southern California before it's too late.
Very,
And every one of the stories that I write comes from some sort of problem, some sort of thing that I'm dealing with at the moment. Like Remainders was from a family crisis that we were going through in 2016. And then Miga, which I also wrote in 2016, or started, is about becoming older as a tech worker and how do I maneuver in an industry that's youth oriented, where you have bosses who are old enough to be your kids.
yeah. Do
And
you,
then the other novel, yeah,
oh,
I'm
I was,
sorry, go ahead.
oh, I was going to ask you, so do you find writing to be cathartic then I mean, clearly it helps you navigate serious things you're going through.
Yes, what usually gets me started on a novel is some sort of problem that I'm trying to solve. And like in another book that I'm working on, it's in submission right now called Christina's Portrait. It is based on a terrible event that happened in my high school nearly 50 years ago. And I've been trying to write to process this horrible thing that happened. A classmate of mine was raped and murdered at our high school campus right after a football game.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. That's horrible.
And it's a story that I've been struggling to write about for 50 years. And I actually, at one point, wrote to the family and asked if I could write the story, and they didn't want to. I mean, even after a period of time, it was still too hard and too raw for them to write about it. So I had to fictionalize it. And not only gave me the emotional distance that I needed to be able to tell the story, but it also enabled me to look at a lot of things that happened in my high school experience. Because, people, when they look back at their past, especially when they're teenagers, they tend to be very selective about what they want to remember. And looking back at this story, it forced me to look at a lot of difficult things that went on in, when I grew up in the 70s, and be able to discuss those in fiction and to, come to, and also to look at a lot of things that we've been struggling with as a society today.
Do you, when you're going back and writing, like thinking about your high school story, like are
Yeah.
you starting to remember things that you hadn't thought of in forever?
Yes, and the high school that I went to isn't far away from here. It's in the San Fernando Valley where I grew up, and I've been visited there several times, and going back to the same places and helped refresh memories. And part of it is not just writing about other people, but learning to face things about yourself, the things that I did as a teenager that I'm not too proud of, and things that I'm not, that were, kids like to talk about cringe. And we all did things when we were young that were cringe. And really forcing myself to be able to look at those things as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, well, good for you. And like, I think about that a lot is like, yeah, we have everybody, if you took anyone on their very worst day and found out what the worst thing they ever did was, would you want to have that person in your life? And I think we all think about that a little bit of like, gosh. So good for you for processing it. Some not sweeping things under the rug. It's so much easier. So.
I mean, it does make these types of books more challenging to find publishers for, because, especially like one of the things I touch on is COVID and the pandemic and the aftermath. And I have a character whose mother dies during the pandemic. And a lot of people are still, we as a society have been willing, just want to brush it under the rug, pretending that it never happened. And the problems that we're facing in our society is that we've never adequately mourned for, 1 million people and more have died and are still dying from COVID.
Yeah.
And we've never really looked at it and we've never mourned for it. And I think a part of where we're at as a society today is we've never, if we were allowed to mourn it, we would have developed a stronger sense of empathy that could have prevented a lot of the things that we're going through today.
That's a very
And
good
so,
point. Yeah, that's a good point. I think a lot of it, I said I had a conversation about a year ago. I'm thinking of like how it was so traumatic that we just wanted to get as far away from it and like not think about it for so long. And it was like, oh my God, I am just now processing my feelings about all of this. And I don't know if I finished
yeah,
processing it, really. So anyway,
yeah.
Matthew, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me at my website, which is matthewarnoldstern.com. And it has links to all my social media. I'm on Facebook, in the Threads, Blue Sky, TikTok. And the handle for all of those is MAS Writer. And I do post about a lot of different things. I also am on Threads. Now I've recently started on Substack. I'm not that hard to find.
Well, it was so great to connect with you. This is, thrill. I love these. This is why I do this is like, I love these conversations of talking about the book and talking about the history of the book and the author and the drama. And it's so interesting to me. So thank you so
Well,
much for
thank you.
joining me.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, cheers, California. I'm going to go into my ice storm now, but y'all enjoy the rest of your beautiful day.
You.
All right.
Thank you for spending some time with me and my guests for an episode of Drinks in the Library. For more information about the show, you can find us on Instagram at Drinks in the Library, on the World Wide Web, drinksinthelibrary.com, or shoot me an email at drinkspod@gmail.com. Until next time, cheers.